Welcome to The Right Question. I'm Daphne Gray Grant. Today we're talking about how to make editing more rewarding. Today I'm answering a question from Tanya Garcia, a writer from Texas. Here's what she asked in her phone message.
Hi, Daphne. So I have a question about your advice on how to stage editing after you have the first crappy draft. So what I find is after I get the first draft of my whole paper, what I've been doing is going through section by section to edit things. What I'm doing right now is I'm editing each section, trying to make it perfect before moving on. And so basically my writing process is really slow and painful in that respect. And so I'm just wondering what advice you have in terms of more effectively editing after you have your first crappy draft. And these are edits before you would edit for wordiness or sentence length. So any advice on that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Tanya. I'm so glad you asked it because I think editing is the most important step in the writing process. More important even than writing. The work of editing is what allows you to take something that is incomplete or inadequate and make it so much better. But I want to zero in on two concepts that you mentioned in your message. Addressing them, I think, will help make the work of editing less stressful for you. The first is the whole idea of trying to make something perfect. Please let go of that concept. None of us can make anything perfect. That's just outside of the human experience. We all make mistakes all the time. Now, maybe you don't really believe that perfection is possible and it's just a word you've used, but I urge you to erase it from your vocabulary. Instead, promise yourself to do the best job you can. That's a reasonable promise and one you can live up to. The second concept I want to highlight is your statement that the editing process is slow and painful. You are not entirely wrong there. It is hard work, but I think perhaps you've been surprised by how long it's taking you. When I lead writing workshops, I frequently ask participants to think about their own writing process. I ask them to estimate how much of their time they spend on each of the three main steps. First, preparing to write. Second, writing. Third, editing or rewriting. Before I tell you what others say, let me ask you to pause the video and think about how much time you spend on each of these steps, then write it down. Have you written it down? Obviously, if you give each step an equal amount of time, that amounts to 33 1/3 for each. But few people tell me that answer. Now I'll tell you that the majority of the people spend most of their time on writing. Many of them give it 60% or more. A small number of people tell me they spend more time preparing to write. One participant even admitted she spent 90% of her time preparing. Academics are particularly prone to overusing this category. These are the people who've fallen into the rabbit hole of too much time on research. But what really depresses me is that almost no one spends nearly enough time editing. Let me tell you what I recommend. I think the best, most fruitful division of labor gives preparation 40% of your time, writing 20%, and editing or rewriting 40% as well. I don't manage to produce everything I write according to this formula, but I try. Notice the basic principle. Editing should take twice as long as writing. So if your editing is taking 10 times longer than writing, perhaps you do have a problem. But if it's in the range of twice as long, understand that's normal and expected. Frustrating maybe, but normal. Also keep in mind that it's not necessary to edit in a chronological fashion. By that I mean you don't have to start with chapter 1 and work your way consecutively through to chapter 23. Instead, dive into your manuscript or text in the spot that seems most appealing to you that day. Editing is not meant to be punishment. And if your text has a thorny problem that you don't have the strength to address that day, then don't. Save that problem for another day when you feel stronger or have more energy. Becoming an effective editor takes time and practice. But remember, don't make it more painful than it needs to be by using words like perfect or expecting too much of yourself. Finally, let me wrap up with a quote from acclaimed young adult author Catherine Patterson. I love revision. Where else can you turn spilled milk into ice cream? Thanks, Tanya. I hope you have the chance to enjoy making some ice cream.